Now, if any of you haven't seen my last bigger theory about Xehanort, Xion, Kairi, and the Master Masters and how all of them are tied together, then please check it out. The link is in the description for y'all. Most of it still pretty much holds up even after all of the new revelations we got at the end of Melody of Memory, and that's quite the bunch to be paired together, so please check it out if you haven't already. Now, this video is going to be more a theory and discussion hybrid rather than a solely theory type video. There are going to be some things that I talk about that I'm pretty sure most people probably may have come to the conclusion of, but what I'm going to be doing is expanding on it and theorizing a bigger conclusion that ties all of them together in a big way. And as always with my theory videos, I encourage you guys to please stay to the very end, get your thinking caps on, and pay close attention. So you guys will have some stuff to discuss in the comments. You already know. But also, fair warning, this will include spoilers for Melody of Memory, Dark Road, and pretty much all recent Kingdom Hearts content. So yeah, this is your warning if you guys haven't played those yet or aren't caught up on the story. So let us begin. As we know, at the end of Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory, a whole slew of info and lore was dropped on us about Xehanort's research given to us through Kairi's dreams, the unveiling of Unreality being essentially another reality that's not part of the dream worlds, realm of light, darkness, or in between. Xehanort's experiments on Kairi trying to get her to travel there, and essentially confirming that the area we know of as Shibuya that we saw in Kingdom Hearts 3 Secret Ending, or what the star called Quadratum, is a part of Unreality. And one thing's for sure, we know it's possible to cross between Unreality and reality because Riku did it at the end of Melody of Memory, and Yen Sid comments more on it towards the end. But where I'm going lies more so in what Yen Sid said at the end, that although they themselves don't know much about it, Xehanort studied about Unreality for a long time, and that in Yen Sid's time as a Keyblade Master, it was known that the ancient masters crossed over into another world. And this to me changes so much for the series as we know it currently, and it brings up many ideas to theorize and discuss for the future. Now, when Yen Sid says ancient masters, this to me screams, oh, you know, Master Masters, Age of Fairy Tales time period and beyond. And that would make sense given Kingdom Hearts 3's Secret Ending, where we saw the Master Masters standing atop that building looking at Kingdom Hearts making the heart shape in the same area where Sora, Riku, and Yozora were in. So that tells me that this knowledge of Unreality was something that was passed down and discovered by ancient masters, which include the biggest one being the Master Masters, but also includes the likes of potentially Odin, aka Ericus and Xehanort's masters, and maybe even the Foretellers. This possibility, along with a big secret that is a potential truth in Unreality's inner workings that will connect both realities as well as each aspect of this theory to solidify it. So please, once again, I ask that you stay to the end of the video, and I'm gonna have another key phrase to put in the comments when you talk below like always, so I'm gonna know the loyalists and who's really paying attention in this video. Now anyway, let's break this all down. Now, this section on the Master Masters will probably be the shortest considering it may be the most obvious to say the least. Now, we know the Master Masters was a go with the flow individual on the outside, but was actually a cunning trickster in truth, and his preparing of the Foretellers for if he ever suddenly disappeared was something that was more obvious than something like foreshadowing to say the least. And as we know, in the end he did disappear, leaving them behind, but we see him again later down the line helping young Xehanort in his apprentice years to see the worlds, you know, the world tour, the same old one we know. And then at the end of that scene in Remind, he disappeared once again. Xehanort said he never found out 100% who the Master Masters was, but he didn't say that he never saw him again after that. But regardless, he disappeared again anyway. But now we see him again in the Kingdom Hearts 3 Secret Ending, or rather who we assume to be him, because who else would be making a heart at Kingdom Hearts like that? It seems like the Master personality, at least to me. We have no proof it's him in that scene, but I'm pretty confident that it is. All of these things to me scream that the Master Masters is well aware of Unreality and is crossing over constantly between reality and unreality as he pleases. And maybe this was the reason why Xehanort was researching Unreality in the first place, so he could track down the Master Masters once and for all, maybe even going to the lengths of using Kairi as a subject for that and potentially more of his experiments on the side. But yes, I think this is a common train of thought at this point, with the exception of the additional bits that I did add. Moving on for now, expanding more on this at the end. Now, Odin is one that I'm taking more of a theorizing step of faith here, which is perfectly okay with me. I don't mind it. Now, Odin was old. We don't know how old, but we know that these masters can get pretty old. I mean, look at Yen Sid. Come on now. But I'm willing to take the chance in saying that Odin probably did make the jump into Unreality as well. At the current moment in Dark Road, we aren't 100% sure how the journey of things unfold completely, but we do know a part of the end result of the main journey being betrayed to us. The main reason why I say Odin did is because we don't know his age, so he he very well could have been a master for an incredibly long time, aka long enough to be an ancient master as well technically, or at the very least having learned of the ancient master's secret of crossing over to this other world like Yen Sid had heard about it. Again, right now we don't know what happens to Odin down the line, and he very well could have just died, but I don't believe that to be the case. That's too easy. Odin is a very suspicious character to me in the first place because even throughout the Dark Road scenes, the information given to Ericus, Xehanort, and their group differed from what Odin told the Keyblade wielders taking the Mark of Mastery program. They were sent on a much more dangerous task than foretold, and how the masters would be chosen was different than what was explained later on. Even the main group questioned it, especially Baldur, who had a sibling taking the exam under Odin. A huge thing that tips me off to believe that Odin crossed over into Unreality is because there was a scene shown that took place 4 years after the primary events being shown in Dark Road, and it highlighted some graves, 4 of them with flowers that Ericus and Xehanort were standing over. Now keep that in mind, 4 graves that had flowers. That's enough for the remainder of the class that Ericus and Xehanort was working with, Vor, Hermod, Bragi, and Erd. But that still leaves 2 main characters in Dark Road out, Odin and Baldur. And this leads me to believe that those 2 were still alive at that point and currently having no confirmation of their death. So although unsure of Baldur, considering how other characters we never saw deaths of, being the Master of Masters and the Foretellers, are showing up in the current era, Odin may very well do the exact same thing, having crossed into Unreality to escape to a later time. And the last batch before tying everything together is the Foretellers. Now we know the Foretellers did in fact fight in the Keyblade War. Although many wielders died that day, and even Player having fought the Foretellers, we never actually saw them die. Neither did we see any sign of the Keyblades being in the Keyblade graveyard at any point. I mean, these were important characters. I feel like that if their Keyblades were there, we would have seen them, you know, or they would have highlighted them. But as we saw at the very end of Kingdom Hearts 3, the Foretellers, with the exception of Ava, who we aren't 100% sure of the whereabouts of, were alive and well. Summoned to the Keyblade graveyard by Lushu, he had the box with him and was prompted by Aset to tell them of his role. Now consider the possibility that during the war, even with how divided some of them were or how close some of the others were, the Foretellers were able to escape the fight, come together, and cross over into Unreality. Actually, now that I think about it, they didn't even need to have to cross over together as long as each of them knew of that world, as I'm pretty confident they did, considering they were ancient masters too, so they could. Alright, now before you start clickety-clacking away, bear with me for a second. You may think that, well, if they knew of Unreality, then why didn't they theorize that and try to look for the Master of Masters? Well, there's 2 reasons. 1, Unreality is the flip side of our reality, meaning that they could look around countless worlds in Unreality for decades and still not even find them. And 2, they had roles to play that they were given. They had a duty to watch over the unions, train the Keyblade wielders, and lead the world towards the future on the path of the light. A duty that they couldn't just leave behind out of nowhere, unless someone went around handpicking great individuals to be the new union leaders in the time to come, which Ava did, just in case, you know. Now the other Foretellers didn't know this, and they very well could have just decided to leave because of all the bloodshed of the Keyblade War. I mean, with no more wielders left to govern, they would be free to just dip to Unreality if they wanted to, right? But with that, we move on to the last section of this video, the secret of Unreality's workings and how all of these people utilized it to their advantage. Now for those of you actually sticking through and not just skipping around, let's have a little break. Make sure you put hashtag Odin is sus in the comments for those that made it this far. And if you like it right now, then hit me with that like and sub on the channel. Any and all support is encouraged and greatly appreciated. And if you ain't invested yet, well then, get ready for this last section that ties everything together in a huge way, and let's see if I can change your mind. Now when going through and explaining each of these parts, there was something that I left out that's a big defining factor, tying all these points together and really fleshing out this theory, making its foundation and solidity. What I'm thinking is that Unreality, although the flip side of our reality, is not exactly the same. I mean, that seems obvious, right? But what I mean is that not only are the things inside Unreality different, but I believe that there's a possibility that time flows significantly differently in Unreality than it does in our reality. The reason I think this is connected to the details that I discussed in each of these prior sections of the ancient masters that crossed over into Unreality potentially. I mean, just look at the main factors. Look at the Master Masters and the Foretellers. The Foretellers that we see look exactly the same as how we saw them in the Age of Fairy Tales. No noticeable significant aging in their looks or in their voices, and the same goes for the Master Masters. Although we never see his face, we know he's different from Lushu, who has switched bodies countless times. The Master Masters has the same voice as he did in the Age of Fairy Tales, and remember, he met up with young Xehanort and his voice was exactly the same there too, and then he disappeared once again. But we know lifetimes have passed in our reality, because look at Lushu. He's had to jump from body to body time and time again to continue his journey of watching over the box and the no-name Keyblade so the masters can see into the future. I mean, even the Foretellers asked if that was Lushu and made comments about how he looked different. And speaking of the no-name Keyblade, when you really think about it, the Master of Masters crossing over into Unreality is exactly the reason why he might have needed to embed his eye into the no-name Keyblade, because if he was still in reality, just hiding somewhere, he could still watch over the state of that world himself, right? No matter the realm inside reality. But in Unreality, which is completely separate from reality and its realms, he needed a way to keep an eye on things. No pun intended. He remained in Unreality, of course, so he can know and choose when he would like to cross back over for a bit, like with young Xehanort, and then jump back to Unreality. And again, Lushu summoned the Foretellers back into our reality on his own and told them his role. So I'm willing to bet even though the Foretellers did cross over into Unreality too, they didn't find the Masters at all. So anyone that crossed over into Unreality, Ancient Masters or whoever found out, would just need to cross over into Unreality, ride things out so that whatever happened in reality would already be done, and then they could just jump back when they want to. Their aging is a huge component that screams to me that time flows differently there than it does for us. Now, there isn't much to confirm Odin, except mainly my speculation on how with current Dark Road info, all the signs point towards only Vor, Bragi, and Hermod having died, while Baldur and Odin's deaths are unaccounted for. Again, can't say much about Baldur right now, but Odin definitely may have made the jump all the same to avoid more tragedy under his watch as master in the coming times, like with those 4 individuals as well as the other Keyblade wielders that were taking the Marker Mastery exams, because he certainly sent the candidates in that exam and Ericus and Xehanort's groups on a mission potentially way above their skill levels. As far as we, or at least I'm concerned, Odin disappeared, or Ericus and Xehanort graduated and left without finding out whatever happens to him, never really looking back. Hey, yeah, that's gonna be the end. Begin the discussion. I wanted to hear what you guys thought about all this in the comments, not just with me, but with everyone else in the comments as well. And don't be afraid to say you think I'm right, or you think I'm dead wrong, or half right, or whatever. Remember, at the end of the day, I'm not saying any of this is set in stone, but it's just what I believe to be most likely the case as of now. And I'm pretty confident about this one, so please, if y'all don't mind, share this video with other Kingdom Hearts fiends that you know, whether they be theorists or not, big or small, so they can come and discuss these things as well. And of course, like the video if you enjoyed, and consider subscribing to the channel here, and check out my other platforms in the description, like my Twitch, to where I stream full game playthroughs and even sometimes random games regularly just to vibe out with y'all. Any and all support is greatly appreciated, so please consider doing so, because it helps me to continue to create content. And I have a wide variety, so please don't be afraid to check out my other original series like Choose Your Hand and the most deadly Pokemon of each type, or Make a Moveset. Even my Twitch stream highlights are over here, so please consider checking out all of that stuff as well. Anyway, I gotta dip. Thank you all for checking out the video, and see you later.